Welcome to How I Doctor, where we're bringing joy back to medicine. I'm recording this on Christmas Eve, a few hours before I go in for my 12-hour night shift, and we're releasing this on Christmas Day. So if you're in healthcare and you're working today, there's a good chance it doesn't look like a Hallmark movie. So thank you for working on Christmas, on New Year's, on honestly any day this year, and showing up for your patients. In healthcare, I think we're quick to find fault, look for imperfections, but you don't see most other people in the world disrupting their holidays and weekends because they're committed to their career of helping other people. And now that I've said that, here's the part of the podcast where I tell you it's a rerun. I've had a ton of highlights and incredible experiences this year, and interviewing the Mark Cuban was absolutely one of them. This was the first time I'd ever rehearsed an interview. I practiced having ChatGPT act like Mark. My Offcall founder, Jake, and I tested the questions and the style. But when it came time for the interview, I just kind of had to hold on and enjoy the ride. Mark rapidly jumped from topic to topic, and my methodical, organized set of questions went out the door immediately, which I think is why it was such an awesome interview. This conversation ended up being one of the biggest episodes we've ever launched because Mark doesn't talk about healthcare like an executive or a politician. He talks about it like a problem to be solved, a problem to be fixed, and he doesn't pull punches about what's getting in the way. But before we jump in, I just want to share one thing I'm especially proud of this year as well as we close out the year. We just released the 2025 Physicians AI Report, a nationwide survey of over 1,000 doctors about how AI is actually showing up in our daily work. Not the hype, not the press release, but what's helping, what's frustrating, and what physicians wish someone would finally build. You can find it at offcall.com, and I think you'll recognize yourself in the data. So today, on Christmas, we're resharing this conversation with Mark Cuban, one that still sticks with me, and one that captures exactly why we started this show in the first place. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being a part of this community. Now, let's get into it. Frankly, Mark, you might have the best understanding of medicine, including the people inside it as well. Mark, I think you believe in trusting experts, reading the fine print, challenging interests, and disrupting industries with trust and transparency, and honestly, just common sense.
That always helps.
Thank you so much for joining me today. It's really a pleasure to meet you and talk with you.
Thanks for having me on.
You know, I think the reason that you're so good at that insider-outsider role is you boil down stuff, really complex stuff like healthcare, to simple stuff that humans can understand. So let me just ask you, who are the good guys? Who are the bad guys in American healthcare today?
Wow, you get right to it.
We're going for it. We're going for it, Mark.
So, first, you got to ask a question. What are the complications of healthcare? Because healthcare really is a simple business. It is one of the simplest businesses on the planet. You go to the doctor. Hopefully, the doctor says nothing's wrong. If there's a complication or some need, the doctor tells you what you need. You need this medication. You need to go to the hospital, whatever it is. And there's really only two questions: what's it going to cost, and how are you going to pay for it? That's it. It's just a two-question industry. And what happens is, rather than just keeping it at that simple level, the entire industry, because of its scale, has grown in complication, because every complication you add is an opportunity for arbitrage. You get a chance to squeeze your nickel, your dime, your quarter, and you multiply that by some, big number, and boom, right? Or it might be just a minutia in terms of percentages times a big number. Somebody's happy all the way to the bank. So when you ask, who are the bad guys? The bad guys are anybody who complicates it, because that's where all doctors, physicians in particular, start to get away from just doing medicine.
Yeah.
Because the reality is, if, whether it's an emergency room, whether it's primary care, whatever it is, specialty, if everybody walked in and had a daddy's credit card and all the pricing was transparent, so everybody got to see what everybody else is doing, and we still had the Yelps of the world, so we have some sort of transparency, for better or worse, on the quality of care, you guys would just take care of your patients,
Yeah.
take your notes, put them in the EMR, and that's it. There would be nothing else for you to do, and guess what? You'd be golfing on Wednesdays again. Because that's what's all
Yeah.
that's what this whole conversation is about. How can we get doctors to be able to golf on Wednesdays like they used to?
Clearly, that's the most important piece of all this, Mark.
Right, because that means you can afford it. You can afford the country club. You can afford to take the time off. You don't feel so stressed by your patients, and you feel trusted. And those pieces are missing, and anybody who gets away from that is the bad guy. Now, that doesn't mean that we have the ultimate solutions on pricing and paying, but that's where the focus needs to be. First of all, there's not enough physicians.
Yeah.
There's about 900,000, and not all of them practice, and maybe 10,000 per class in med
Yep.
school at any given time. And so the first question becomes, in terms of the pricing variable in all this, well, how do you increase the supply to deal with the demand? And so I did some back of the envelope math. And if there's 10,000 students, right? And let's just say for easy math, it's, $60,000 a year. That's $6 billion times four. That's $24 billion. Would it be worth making it so that we can not only expand, but make med school free so you truly get the best of the best as opposed to the best of the people who can either afford it or are willing to take on the debt? So you increase the competition there, so that's a positive. And then in terms of residencies and the like, can you expand it even further and deal with the economics of expanding residencies and some of the issues there? Now, I haven't really dug in there, but that's
It's like
nothing
a
to.
it's a drop in the ocean of the
Right,
healthcare,
right.
the almost 5 trillion we spend. Yeah.
Yeah, and but it changes the dynamics considerably to improve the quality of care. And so that's the first step. And then you dig in on the number of residencies, and can you, because your marginal cost to add another 10,000 doctors, you know, is your $6 billion a year. And if you can add 10,000 doctors and there was residencies for them, or you create a different program that doesn't require a residency, you're just an apprentice in a primary care organization, great, and then if you get a residency 3 years from now, 5 years from now, whatever it is, okay, you can change specialties or go where you need to go. And, as physicians, I understand you're just trying to get through the day, and it's hard enough to deal with this, and that's why you created this company to try to solve the problem. You got to get to the root of the problem. And so one is supply.
Well, Mark, you're right. I don't think the number of residency slots has really increased much. It was set in the 80s. It went up a little bit, I think, in the 90s or 2000s, but nowhere near our population growth, nor our life expectancy, nor the level of complexity of the human beings walking around on the earth today.
And you would know better, how would you increase the number of
Well,
residencies?
we have great ways of already training residents. Right now, hospitals get paid by Medicare to train residents, and we think that probably it's by third year the resident actually becomes a profitable entity for the hospital. First 2 years they're slower, they need to be trained and learn, but by year 3 they actually become profitable to the hospital. And so what is happening today is hospitals are like trading residency slots, or it's like, okay, well, if we're going to go down by 5 urologists, let's go up by 5 ER doctors, but they have a fixed number. And so, that's the other challenge is we don't have enough supply on the physician side to get everybody the care that they need.
Well, it won't be hard. I mean, there's a couple medical schools that have opened up, and again, the marginal cost to either expand the classes so that number goes from 10,000 in a given year to 20,000 isn't dramatic relative to the value, and relative to the overall cost of healthcare. And so there's 1,000 ways to do that, but it's just about getting everybody to agree because, like you were talking about, they get profitable the third year. And if you have 5 urologists, well, is that the specialty that the hospital thinks they're going to maximize their earnings with, because they have their urologist that charges more than any other urologist in the world, takes a peek in the door and then turns it over to the residents, but they still,
They bill
it,
at the attending level. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And it's almost like being, instead of site neutral, doctor neutral.
Yeah.
So there's always the gamesmanship. And I don't know what the AMA would think about that if the doctors, want more constrained supply because that allows you to charge more. But I think there's a path there And that's the place to start.
I think the doctors of 10 years ago or maybe 20 years ago wanted that constrained supply. But today, I mean, we're down to like 7-minute appointments sometimes. The ERs are, often 6 to 12 hours in some places to be seen. And I think today physicians are very aware that we need more supply and that like there is plenty of work to be done.
Right. Oh, yeah, there's no shortage, yeah, of work to be done.
Yeah.
Yeah, and plus as things get smarter, people get smarter, and AI gets better, et
Yeah.
cetera. Part 2 then is how do you simplify the whole economic process? If you look at how insurance plans are designed and the responsibilities associated with those plans, it's criminal. It should be criminal. It is the antithesis of trying to optimize for patient care. And so if you look, let's just say you own an insurance company and you're creating a variety of plans that you want to sell. Well, it's up to you as the insurance company to determine the premiums you're going to charge, the features you're going to offer, and the patient responsibility, the deductible, the out of pocket, the co-insurance, whatever it may be. Well, guess what? You go then to CMS, and if it's a Medicare Advantage plan or an ACA plan, you try to get it approved, and typically they'll approve it, with some constraints. And then you'll offer some for self-insured employers because more than 50% of people get their insurance through an employer. Well, then the goal from the self-insured employer is to try to make their employees and their families happy, right? They're going to make determinations of which plans to offer. And then each of us, whether you're a doctor, whether you're a nurse, whether you're a janitor, whether you're an accountant, you're going to choose the plan that's appropriate, you think, for your family. You know who's not involved in any of that?
The patient?
No, you,
Oh, the doctor. Yeah.
the doctor in the
Yeah.
hospital, right?
Yeah.
The care, right? But who takes the patient financial responsibility risk?
Me.
You
Yeah.
do. Yeah, so if you're an independent physician that's seeing patients in your office and you happen to be in Humana or whoever, United, you pick one of any of the Buca's networks, all right. Well, if they design a plan that you had nothing to do with the design and one of those patients walks in the door, you don't get to look at the financial statement, fortunately, of the patient. But if they design a high deductible plan and they made it available to somebody with a take-home pay of $25,000 and there's a deductible of $5,000,
They're hosed. Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
screwed.
Yeah. I guess
You're
I guess
screwed.
that's the interesting
Now
thing.
the patient
I'm saying the patient's screwed. The hospital.
No,
Yeah. The
no, the
hospital and the
patient's not
doctor.
screwed
Yeah.
because the patient's getting care, right? Your contract with that network says even if they're broke as a joke and don't have 2 nickels to rub together, you have to still care for them.
Well, and especially as an ER doctor, we have
Well,
this
yeah,
rule called
that's law,
EMTALA
right?
that we have
Yeah.
to take care of anybody and stabilize them regardless of ability to pay. Yeah.
Well, put that aside because of Emtala,
Sure.
right? Put that aside as a unique situation. If you're seeing patients for whatever your specialty is, primary care, and you're in your office or you're at the hospital where you keep an office, and they walk in the door and they have a boo boo, and that boo boo is going to cost more than a couple $1,000s, and they have $17 in the bank, well, whatever the delta is, you're responsible for figuring it out. But wait, there's more. It gets worse because that financial responsibility for that risk of debt default that you take on, now you're also responsible for figuring out a payment methodology if there is one. And if that patient now all of a sudden is accumulating $5,000 in debt, then 10,000, then 20 and goes bankrupt, who gets blamed?
Yeah. Me, because I charge too much.
Not even yeah, and it's not even your fault, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just the plan was designed in a
To
manner
fail. Yeah.
so that you knew that there were gonna be buyers of this plan who can't afford the deductible.
And the insurance companies surely love it because they have no risk because the deductible's huge.
Right. It's more profitable for them, right? And so from a PR perspective, now all of a sudden, oh, medical bankruptcy, there's X hundred billions of dollars in medical debt. We got to get rid of it. There's X percentage of people and number of people who are declaring bankruptcy, which is for medical costs, which is horrible. But it all goes back to the simple side of it, the plan design, right?
Mark, you're hitting at something that I was going to bring up later, there is a sense among physicians that we are the face of healthcare. We're the bosses, we're in
Of
charge.
course.
And so we are now, I think the big feeling that physicians are having right now is that we are also to blame. And so you're bringing up a really interesting side of it that, like, the feeling from the patients is that we're charging too much, even though we're taking on the risk. And the patients also similarly feel like, well, the doctor should be deciding if I need this CT scan or if I need to get this medicine. But so much of it now is controlled by the payers as well. Like the payer will refuse to allow the CT without the prior auth too. Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah, put
yeah,
aside pre-auth. We'll get to pre-auth. Look, let me just tell you up front, doctors are underpaid. Like, when I look at bills, of individual bills, and it might, just to pick one out of thin air,
yeah.
heart transplant, right? $25,000. Amount paid to the doctor,
Yeah,
$2,200.
for literally taking a heart out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if I'm getting a heart transplant, I want that motherfucker doctor to make $10,000 so he's paying attention or she's paying attention
Yeah.
and not worried about getting to the next heart transplant or worried about the patient that's got a boo-boo, and so it's such a fucking mess, right?
Yeah. Before we jump into today's episode, I want to give a huge shout out to our first ever How I Doctor podcast sponsor, Abridge. Abridge is the leading AI platform that drafts structured, clinically useful notes at the point of conversation. Clinicians remain in full control because they review and finalize every note. With Abridge, many clinicians report reclaiming time and reducing their documentation burden, myself included. I've been using Abridge in my role as a practicing emergency physician in San Francisco, and clinicians who use it report up to an 86% reduction in effort writing notes, a 78% reduction in cognitive load, and 70% decrease in after hours documentation. The company was also founded by a physician and is completely dedicated to empowering clinicians, which is what makes them the perfect first sponsor for How I Doctor. If you aren't yet using Abridge, inquire with your IT department today or reach out at abridge.com/contact. Thank you, and now let's get to today's episode. Before we jump into the episode, I want to thank our sponsor, Evidently. Evidently is the clinical data intelligence platform built to help physicians harness the ocean of patient data they're drowning in every day. From chart summarization to AI-assisted note drafting and denial appeal support, Evidently makes sure the right data shows up at the right time. Physicians using Evidently report spending less time hunting through charts and more time focusing on patient care. That's why they've become a trusted partner to health systems looking to improve documentation, quality, and revenue sustainability. The company is led by providers and AI researchers that are dedicated to reducing documentation burden and helping clinicians practice at the top of their license. If you want to see what Evidently can do for your hospital or your practice, reach out today at www.evidently.com. Now, let's get into today's episode.
And then what happens is, whether it's individual doctor at your own clinic or your own deal, right? Then the hospitals have to deal with it as well. So now this falls, if you work for a hospital,
Yep.
it's their financial responsibility. It falls on them. So now what do? They have to make it up elsewhere.
Yeah.
They have to increase their prices. They have to game the system as much as they can to overcharge
Everybody else. Yeah.
where they can to make up for those losses. Those losses don't pay for, unless it's Medicare, then Medicare, I think, covers 65% of it. Okay, but you got to wait to get your money. So now you've got that issue. And so now the hospitals are playing all kinds of games in how they charge. So you've got facilities fees. Are you kidding me? Like, I'll pay for what I got, what I need, right? I had my hips replaced. Bam, hit me. A facilities fee? They start complicating. Remember at the beginning, who's the bad guys, right? Anybody who complicates the program, anybody who complicates the economics takes responsibility for, at least at some level, being the bad guy in all of this. And so hospitals find ways to compensate, but they're not even the worst of them all. The insurance companies are the worst of the worst of the worst of the worst of the worst. First of all, they're designing those plans. And they're designing those plans with actuarial data based off the population that they're dealing with to figure out, how to maximize their earnings. And they're figuring all that out not only by the premiums and the deductibles and the co-insurance and the co-pays, but they're figuring out by having these subsidiaries because they're vertically integrated, how they can game the system. Like you buy the physician's practice that's, 3 floors up, and now because you're a hospital and they're part of yours, you get to charge, the inpatient versus outpatient, and the price, escalates, and that's an arbitrage private equity place, right? But wait, there's more. Insurance companies also use their PBMs. So, because particularly for the ACA, they have to hit their 85% medical loss ratio. And so they run, specialty medications at enormously inflated prices with huge margins, but then the PBM bills the insurance company at the inflated price. So they get to keep the margin as profit until once they do the roll up, right? If you're following me between the two companies. But as it applies to MLR, as best I can tell, that just jacks up the MLR and they're just gaming the system. And so you start seeing all of these things happening over and over. I talked to CFOs at hospital networks and I'm like, okay, so let me get this straight. You have a contract with one of the BUCAs, one of the big insurance companies, right? And that contract for a hip replacement, to pick one out of left field, $15,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you do the hip replacement, they don't just pay you $15,000, assuming it's just normal. They say, yeah, we're not going to pay you $15,000. We're going to pay you 13,000. And despite the fact that you have a contract, and the CFO's like, yeah, that's what they do. They just underpay and make us fight for it. Now, what does that mean in terms of the cost of the healthcare to this country? It means that hospital has to have lawyers.
Yeah.
They have to have all these administrative people checking all the bills, and you can use AI or not, but you're going to have people there checking and reviewing. And that, when you hear all these discussions about the administrative cost as a percentage of the $4.9 trillion being anywhere from 20, 30, maybe 40%, that's where that comes from. And when you talk to these CFOs, they say that's 3 to 5% of their revenue.
Wow.
So you've got bad debt. You've got basically this underpayment, which is 3 to 5% of revenue, plus all the associated overhead of dealing with it. And then we get the pre-auth.
Yeah, we've only just now gotten to pre-auth. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Now, the thing about pre-auth, it's not, it's minimally designed to keep bad medicine from happening. Minimally designed. It's designed, one, just to drive doctors crazy because they always hire the worst doctors, apparently.
We think it is. We are absolutely, it's not paranoia when it's true.
But here's the real reason. It's for the time value of money. If you have billions and billions of dollars, $1 billion a year, let's just say you work through pre-auths and you just extend them as long as you can. And if that average balance is $1 billion, 4% of that is a shitload of money. That's
Yeah.
$40 million. If you're bigger as a insurance plan and it's 10 billion, now it's $400 million. So if I can keep a bunch of doctors pissed off at me, but I'm making an extra $400 million, what am I going to do? And so they're a bad actor for complicating things and not trying to simplify anything. CMS enables all this shit by approving all the plans, knowing this stuff happens. CEOs of, even the CEO of your hospital, for your own internal benefits, they sign off on these things knowing it's a clusterfuck, right?
Yeah.
They know all these things. This is not news to any of them, but they don't say, no, we're not going to sign a deal like that because they're afraid of getting kicked out of the network or not having that as a negotiation. They want that so they can better negotiate the fees that are agreed upon, that are shown on the website as part of transparency, that they really don't pay because they're short paying you, causing you to hire all these additional administrative and lawyers and sue each other, losing 3 to 5%. And meanwhile, while you're getting sued and everything, and you're going back to the lawyers and doing all the extra paperwork for that, the lawyers can't do that paperwork and help you with that because they're talking to the committees who are denying them on their pre-auths so that they can make money off of the time value of money. It's just like Rube Goldberg would have just loved every minute of this stuff.
And Mark, that is all of that swirl is, like, happening way up here, and honestly, the doctor and the patient and the nurse are just way down at the bottom, just trying to, like,
Just getting shit on every
just trying to
day.
help somebody with their diabetes or replace their hip or get them a cath or, whatever it is, and it's so frustrating.
I can't tell you, you know what's crazier? I've talked to multiple CFOs of hospital systems when I ask them, how much does a hip replacement cost you? How much does setting a broken arm cost you?
They have
Well, I
no
don't know.
idea. No idea. Yeah.
None, none. And a lot of what they do talk about is patient mix or payer
Yeah.
mix
Payer
more
mix. Yeah,
aptly,
I hear that all the time. Yeah.
right? Because we have X amount of Medicare patients, X amount of Medicaid patients, and we need all these other folks to get more. So, but what they don't tell you is unless you're in a non-competitive market, they're spending all kinds of money on marketing and specialists because they want to have the brand so that when you do need, your hip replaced, you're the orthopedic destination. And now we've gotten to the point where, there's no wards anymore, right? And so everything's either private room or a couple people with a curtain, which is fine, right? And so the point being, they've made everything more expensive because they think that's the way they have to compete. And because there's no transparency, that often is the way you have to compete. Now you're seeing more and more people, you're seeing apps pop up and other things where it's like, I'm going to get an x-ray or I'm going to a primary care physician. I'm going to shop.
Yeah.
And you're starting to see it's not prevalent, but you're starting to see more and more of that. And it may drive some doctors batty, but it's a right direction for everything. And where I think it goes, and where I think there's a real opportunity for physicians that have their own practice is with direct contracting. And so I'll tell you what we do now with my companies. And it was a lesson I learned the hard way or expensive way.
Mark, is this the beginnings of Mark Cuban Wellness? I've seen a little bit about that,
Yeah,
and I would yeah.
yeah.
Oh, great,
Pretty
great,
much,
great.
yeah. So we learned a lesson. My daughter broke her hand playing basketball, when she was 15, 16, a couple years ago. And it was like, okay, I'm just looking at costs and everything because I had time. Remember, I self-insure.
Yeah.
So it's either my left pocket or my right pocket, whichever credit card happens to be in whichever pocket. I'm paying it directly. I'm paying
You're
for it.
paying for it ultimately. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was like a fourth of the price to just hand out my credit card rather than put it through insurance. I'm like, okay, the entrepreneur in me starts thinking, well, it's this way for this, what is it for everything else? And that's what got me to understand all these ancillary complications and costs that we just discussed. And so I'm putting my Shark Tank hat on and I'm like, okay, if a hospital walked into Shark Tank or a doctor or a practice walked into Shark Tank, how would I analyze their business and how would I redesign their business? I always get
Yeah.
accused of Shark Tank
Love it.
of, recreating someone's business. So I'm like, okay, well, if on one hand the bukas are taking 3 to 5% for a negotiated price, if they're having, this huge balance for pre-auths that are more about delay than really I'm not saying it's 100% about delay, but there's some material
It's
percentage
a
that's
yeah,
about that.
yeah, for sure.
And so that's just an additional cost. And then they have to take on the bad debt risk as well. That's another additional cost. That's 30, 40% potentially or more of their revenue. So I'm like, okay, let's go start talking to these hospitals to make sure, what we think is correct. And let's just say to them, A, I want to trust the doctor. Now I'm going to play
Thank
Ronald
you,
Reagan.
Mark, for just saying that part of it.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to play Ronald Reagan. I'm going to trust and verify because
Yeah,
if all of
sure.
a sudden there's
Totally.
37 spinal surgeries in out of 100 employees and their families,
Yeah. We gotta look into look into it. Yeah.
yeah. But so I said, okay, we're going to trust until you give us a reason not to. No pre-authorizations.
Bravo.
And on top of that, if you do a direct contract deal with us, there's going to be no deductible from the employee. We'll cover all of it. So you have zero
Wow.
risk associated with
So
that
you've now
credit.
de-risked that entire interaction.
De-risked
Yeah.
everything, right?
Yeah.
Now, in exchange, I want a better price. I want a better price than you're giving the biggest insurance company because you're already giving the cash person who walks in the door. And when I ask you why you're giving them a better price, it's because you don't have all the administrative headaches,
Yeah.
you know? And so I want a better price than that because what I'll do is I'll personally guarantee it. If you need me to, as you know, depending on the number of employees in that region, I'll even put I'll put a debit on in an account for you, so you just credit it as you provide the services. So you have no cash issues whatsoever. But we started off at 100% of Medicare, and that worked for a lot of practices. And now we're up for some of the hospital networks. We're about 120% of Medicare on a fee for service basis, and 150% for more advanced things. And for specialty,
And that's enough?
oh yeah, because they know. Like I
Wow.
mean, I had one hospital network say 120% of Medicare. Let's go. I would do that for everybody all the time with your scenario, right? Where it's prepay cash.
Mark, where is all that money going then? It's going to all the people that complicate the system? Everybody's taking their little slice of the
Yes,
pie?
everybody takes as much as they
Yeah.
can get. Then you have your chief revenue officer who has 16 revenue consultants who try to like then go back and out of that 3 to 5%, they go and analyze those and then go and sue them all, you
Yeah,
know, sue
yeah.
the bukas to try to get that money back. That's more overhead. And so all these complications, like, you know, now somebody pitched to me a business using AI where they analyze millions of claims so that they can anticipate what each of the insurance companies is looking for when they do a pre-op denial.
Sure.
And so they then use the AI to actually write the response. So it already does. So they, you know, they tries to reduce.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck do you need that for? Just do it right the first way. And so, you know, when I hear hospitals say, "Oh, we lose 8% on Medicare." No, you don't. You spend your way into a deficit
Wow.
because of all the ancillaries, you know, and all the growth you're trying to create and all the Super Bowl ads you're trying to buy,
Yeah.
you know? And so when you those are the complications. Those are the bad guys. If it was 1955, if the government just says, "You know what? We're gonna guarantee all everybody's medical bills, not pay for them like single payer, but guarantee them because effectively for if you're under the federal poverty level, you're on Medicaid
Yeah,
anyway, it's
sure.
guaranteed. If you're above that and you're older, you're on Medicare, it's not fully guaranteed, and there's a lot of out of pocket, but there's a lot guaranteed. So now the question is, if we did a means tested that said, you know, if you make twice the federal poverty level up to, you know, 3 times the federal poverty level, you know, we're gonna just deduct 2% of your paycheck
Sure.
every paycheck until it's paid off.
Yeah.
And then after some period of time, because, you know, if something horrific happens, after 15 years, we stop deducting, right? You lose your job, we put it on hold. But then you have the government guarantee. Now all of a sudden, you may be able to charge just straight up Medicare
Yeah.
because across the board, you don't have to worry about payer mix. And for the super, you know, the super duper superstars, you know, the heart transplant that can do the heart transplant while playing the guitar with his eyes closed, right? And, you know, for the people who want that, okay, charge a premium for that and make that outside the program. But you just check the credit worthiness of the person making that decision. If it's, you know, some genetic scenario and you need some special, you know, care that's involved, well, okay, we'll pay some amount plus a markup so that it's worth your while. But if you don't have, you know, 600 people working at the hospital that just work in administration, you know, and legal,
That's a lot of savings you can pass along to yeah.
not just for you, not just for patients, but for taxpayers in the entire country.
Like Mark, let's say it is $1 trillion. You know, if it's like 4.5 trillion we spend right now, maybe 5 in 2025, maybe, you know, a fifth of that is just to make the numbers easy, it's $1 trillion. So is that money that is going into healthcare workers' pockets because they're able to make more money? Is it going back
Oh,
to
you mean if we save?
yeah, if we're saving that, is that money
Yeah,
that
you
I'm
make
making
that
more
choice, right?
money? Or is it that employers can now pay their employees more because there's less waste in the system and so our raises go up?
So hopefully, right? Because the more time you spend doctoring and the less time you spend administering, the more valuable you are.
Sure.
And, you know, because trying to do that 7-minute churn thing, that's because, you know, that those numbers, that analysis includes all that overhead.
Yeah. It's like the system is feeding itself.
Yeah, no, it's eating
Yeah.
itself. Yeah, it's eating
Yeah.
itself.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and it's not virtuous. It's the opposite of a virtuous cycle, right? Um,
Yeah.
you know, it's a horrific cycle because every cycle just makes it worse.
Mark, you know, with cost plus drugs, you have a very transparent markup. you talk a lot about you're selling trust, and trust is through transparency as well. Why was it 15%? Is that just an easy number? I mean, is that should that be the number of the markup for an ER doctor or an orthopedic surgeon? Like, should that be a fixed number or
No, basically, we just pulled it out of thin air. It was like, okay, if we can get to certain volumes, given that we're lean and mean and automated a lot of respects, how low can I make it and still make money at scale?
yeah. And try to keep it as few complications and as few people dipping into that bucket as
Well, because
possible?
there's nobody dipping in at all,
Yeah.
right? Other than the pharmacists, that we're working with to do all this, and we're trying to make sure they get paid, what they deserve. The key is my mission. We're a public benefit corporation. I don't need more money. I'm a lucky motherfucker. I've got as much money as I need. But when it's all said and done, if I can save lives, and you
Yeah.
wouldn't even believe the emails I get. I mean, you know, I got one a couple weeks ago where, I the medication I was prescribed was going to cost $903 at the local pharmacy. I couldn't afford that. And I made the decision that our family couldn't afford it. And I didn't want my wife borrowing it. And then I saw in Cost Plus Drugs, it was $73.
Wow.
Now, the other ones, hey, I was getting ready to pay $2,000. You guys were $13 for the especially generic like imatinib.
Yeah, and the data is very clear that patients, especially on fixed or lower incomes, they're choosing between medicine and food, or they're rationing their medicine. They're taking half
All
a
the time.
pill. They're all the time.
All right. One of the great lies of the PBM, the pharmacy benefit manager world, is that specialty drugs are special. And because they're special, they want you to buy it from their pharmacy at a high price, huge markup. And so people think, okay, it's on a tier 6, it must be special, it must be unique. And we literally now have Medicare patients who of Part D and their coinsurance for especially medication is so high that they come to us and they're like stunned that we could be, under $25 for something they were looking at spending a fortune on. And so, there it's just such an opaque industry, and the pharmacy side isn't as convoluted as the healthcare side, but it's just as bad. And so, by being transparent, it just changed the game, and literally one of the smartest things we did was we published our entire price list. We have 2,500 medications, not all, we don't have as many brand drugs as we need, and that's for a whole whole 'nother reason with the PBMs, but we published them, and by doing so, researchers were able to say, "Okay, compare this to Medicare, compare this to what this hospital charged on these bills to," et cetera, and, the FTC sued companies and used our numbers. I saw something, or I heard it on a podcast actually, it was fascinating, where they talked about trust. If you were trying to make it an equation, it effectively was transparency divided by self-interest.
Oh yeah.
In other words, the more transparency you have, if it's on a scale of 1 to 10, if you're a 10 in transparency and you're a 1 in self-interest, you're doing it for the right reasons, you've got a trust level of 10. And if that happens, which we think we've got, people are gonna wanna come by. We spend no money on advertising or marketing,
Yeah.
not a nickel. Now, I got a big mouth and a platform, but it's insane that we don't spend a penny, and we've, barely been able to keep up with our growth. And you alluded to Cost Plus Wellness, and I started talking about what we're doing. Well, with the members we have, the lives I've covered, we're direct contracting, like I had mentioned, and where we've been able to do direct contracts, that's in network. And for anything in network for our members, because we want them to stay in network, it's free. Now you pay premiums, but it's free. And a lot of people actually don't even pay premiums anymore because we've saved enough money. So it's free.
Wow. That's incredible. Well, I just have to I think you're also just gaining trust in the medical community too. I mean, I've been following you for a while. You're now doing some IV sterile injectables. I mean, that's mostly what I use in the ER,
Good.
and those are constantly going on shortage as
Yes.
well.
How
Like
insane is that? How
it, for
insane?
and not just for medicines, Mark. Like for
But
salt
sterile
water,
water. Yeah.
for normal saline.
Yeah. Yeah, no, so we build, Alex, my partner, Dr. Alex Osmayansky, who's a radiologist as well, one of the smartest guys I've ever met. This whole thing started because he sent me a cold email. And he wanted to build a compounding pharmacy in Denver, Colorado that only did sterile injectables that were in short supply. And I'm like, how are generics, on short supply? And then we also have this thing called Cost Plus Marketplace, which is business.costplus.com, just as obscene in pricing for patients for specialty, the pricing that hospital networks, big hospital networks pay is ridiculous.
So the hospitals aren't even getting the best rates?
No, it's not even close. Like, look at some of the press release, like from Penn Medical, CHS,
Yeah.
Multiplan. Like, we're saving them millions
Wow.
and millions of dollars because the whole supply chain was complicated again. Just we're in healthcare, that 4.9 trillion, wherever anybody can grab and arbitrage whatever they can out of the system, that's exactly what they are going to do. Like I read this book, The Hospital, and it was an okay book, but the one thing that stood out to me was the small town Ohio hospital when they were buying the for hip transplants, right? What are the actual implants?
Yeah.
Right? The devices, they were paying 2 to 3 times as much as a little bit bigger hospitals down the street. That makes no sense whatsoever, right? So we'll get into those things as well,
Amazing.
and we'll start to take all the mishegoss out of the system, right? The things that just don't add value, where people are just trying to extract margin. And there's just a shocking amount. Now, obviously, the competitors are going to react to us, just like the big PBMs have. The price of specialty generics has dropped like a rock for self-insured companies.
Because you're introducing competition into the
Yes,
market.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Like, they come up with their cost plus plan. That's literally what they call it, our cost plus plan. Now, they won't publish their price list, and they game it and play these other games, and what they can't do in margin on a product, they make up in fees. I mean, the fees that PBMs charge manufacturers and self-insured employers are insane.
Wow. Mark, it just really feels like there's no transparency even with physician salaries. I mean, it's a total black box. We started to just get physicians like, hey, upload your data, help us compile something to figure out what people are seeing. And it's grown like wildfire because we're seeing discrepancies in departments where
Oh, yeah.
somebody accidentally gets the HR thing emailed to them and they're like, wait, I work the same amount as this person. They started at the same time. I'm making $100,000 less than them.
Yeah, for sure. Look, as an employer, I'm not going to lie and say I haven't done that for programmers back in the day. Hey, I can get you for 100, but this person's good and they're asking for 200 and I can't lose them. That happens. But at the same time, the less transparency, the more control.
Hey, today's episode is brought to you by Abridge. We all feel the weight of clinical documentation that follows us home and chips away at our personal time. With Abridge, clinicians can change that. Abridge drafts a structured, clinically useful note at the point of conversation, all seamlessly integrated into Epic and customizable to your specialty while you review and finalize every word. Clinicians have reported significantly less after-hours charting, improved satisfaction, and dramatically lower burnout. Let technology support your day instead of interrupting it. Visit abridge.com to learn how you can focus more on patient care and less on paperwork. Let's put the care back in clinical care. A quick word about today's sponsor, Evidently. Their platform turns an ocean of fragmented clinical data into concise, actionable insights. Chart summaries, note drafting, denial appeal support, HCC capture, so you spend time caring, not chasing. A transplant surgeon at a large academic medical center recently took transplant referral review from 2 hours to 20 minutes with AI-assisted chart review from Evidently. Physicians deserve workflows that improve accuracy, reduce exhausting chart biopsy, and help us practice at the top of our license. If you want to see how this might work in your hospital or your department, go to evidently.com. That's evidently.com to get started today. Mark, let me just ask you this. Why do you trust doctors? Because you seem so pro doctor. And honestly, we don't hear that much anymore. I think there's really been a loss of trust and expertise. But you are like, you say doctors should be paid more. You really, I think you like trust us. And I really appreciate that about you. But why?
Yeah, I mean, I happen to be a fan of people who save lives and make other people feel better, you know? Call me crazy, but I look at that as a good thing. That's good for society and good for my family members and people I know, my friends. You guys bust your ass. You guys go through a whole lot of shit to get where you are, and it's so stressful just trying to keep up, especially now, right? Because with AI and everything, you gotta be smarter than the AI, but you
Yeah.
can't be smarter than the basic AI, so you got to know how to use all the tools. And not only do you have to use all the tools, you have to know which tool to use and how do you like take the best out of the best, because all it takes is one good idea from an AI model and you saved a life. And that's
Yeah.
always a positive. But you guys have to know how to stay ahead. And I respect that. Most doctors I know are competitive like that.
Let me ask you, I'll ask you for some free advice here. If you were physicians, like what's the move that doctors should be doing to disrupt just the same way that cost plus drugs is disrupting pharmacy, like to fight against the payer challenges. Most of us are now employees
Right.
of a health system now, 80% of us just in a decade.
Yeah.
So what's the move that physicians should be doing?
So first of all, for those of you who have your own practice, I'd align altogether. I don't know if there's organizations of people doctors who have their own practice. I'm guessing there are.
Yeah.
And I would hire a salesperson, right? And set up direct contracts, you know, instead of just being in the networks. Because a lot of people, when you go on your own or stay on your own, you try to be a concierge doctor and you
Yeah.
try to, do capitated payments. And, a lot of doctors don't want to get in the sales side of things and don't want to deal with all that. They just want to be doctors. And so I would organize and take that as far as you can. Beyond that, I would identify the hospitals that really, simplified things
Mm.
that are being innovative with payments because as long as there's a shortage, you're going to be in demand and
Yeah.
you're in demand, but it's just the switching costs are high, really, really high. And that's always the challenge. And so, there's no simple answer, but at the same time, with what you're doing with your company, I would try to look for ways to meet patients where they're at, to meet companies where they need to be and provide those solutions. So I would think like an entrepreneur.
Mark, why are more employers not stepping up and talking about this or fixing this? You talk about this all the time with people, but why is it you and not the rest of the Fortune 500s?
Because that's who I am.
Thank you. Thank
Um,
you.
yeah, no, I look at things entrepreneurially. A CEO's just gotta run their business.
Yeah.
It's not their core competency to think about their healthcare budgets, and that's why I can walk in and give them a ton of shit, right? I understand, like, look, before we started Cost Plus, I had my guy, a broker, a benefits broker, who had been my guy for 20 years, and then right when we started, I had to fight, but I finally got our claims for the Mavs, for just generics that cost over $30. That's it, for 18 months. We paid $169,000
Wow.
our out of pocket with Cost Plus, and we had only just started.
Yeah.
And so we only had 111 drugs, $19,000.
A 10 like more than 10x difference in generics?
Yeah, just
Wow.
about, yeah. And I said to my guy, "Guy, you are no longer my guy." And what they were charging us per month and how much like, there's literally brokers that'll do deals where they're getting 7 to 10% of the premiums, and they're getting paid per script that's written that goes through the pharmacy. I mean, it is bonkers, but I didn't know. I was just trying to run a business. I was trying to, you see that gold thing back there, win another one of those. Now, I'm not in charge of that stuff anymore. I did not make that trade, but you get the point.
But Mark, it's really interesting because the corollary between the CEO just trying to run the business is the same with the doctor. I'm just trying to see the patient. And so it feels really hard that like the people on the front lines are doing the work. And like I worked overnight on Thursday night. Like I'm shortening my life by working overnights and weekends and holidays. And then you see the bukas and you see pharma like just printing money out,
Yeah.
and doctors are not seeing that same level
So
for us.
When you have an industry that goes through a transition, you're seeing the consolidation, the vertical integration. Things change,
Yeah.
and PE understands how to do arbitrage. That's what they do. And so they come in and they buy everybody up. When that happens, that's where there's opportunity. Where there's
Yeah.
change
Yeah.
like that, that's where it's like when we came in, everybody was like, talk about printing money, just like, hey, I don't care about that patient. We'll charge them $2,000 for a imatinib. We'll charge them, $30,000 a quarter for droxidopa. What now cost plus $13 and $43 or whatever it is. I mean, you know why they charge that? Because they could.
Because they can. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so here you guys are, physicians, and you are where you are. The industry has changed because of the vertical integration and PE coming in where they're trying to extract every nickel. But you look for the vulnerability points and you look for the things that they don't want to do. And you look to see if that's an opportunity. That's how you guys have to look at it. It's really hard for doctors in particular. I mean, my first company was a company called Micro Solutions, which was a systems integration company. And the one thing about doctors, they all think they're entrepreneurs, right? And they all want to be entrepreneurs and,
Yeah.
and they're all going to start a business because their doctors are smart, right? They figure they'll figure it all out. They're not great business people, you know? Because again, I've been looking at businesses my entire career when looking at the hospital business isn't a whole lot different than looking at 50 other businesses that I've already looked at before. So I can see the similarities, I can see the patterns, I can see what needs to change. That's hard for doctors to do because they haven't had that experience. Whereas, you can look at symptoms and say, oh, yeah, I've seen that shit 50 times before. Bam, 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 bam.
Mark, would you, if you look at hospitals all the time, have you had thoughts about buying, acquiring, partnering with the hospital yourself?
I looked at
Yeah.
it, but the hard part is the flow of patients. You got to work for the insurance company to be your sales organization. That's the challenge. If I can ever get to the point where there's enough businesses, self-insured employers doing direct contracting, then
Yeah.
you can look at it because you can say, okay, I'll be a virtual hospital. I'm going to simplify everything. And, you can have the private room or you can have the double or quadruple room. You pick your choices, but we're going to only design plans that are with you in mind, not that we're selling to 20 other or 100 other companies. We're going to optimize all these variables so that everybody's interests are aligned. We'll save the employer as much money as we can. We'll keep the patient as healthy as we can for as little money and hopefully no money. And, we'll make money as a hospital. Because once you get to the point of trust and transparency, radical transparency, like for cost plus wellness with these direct contracts,
Hmm.
we're going to publish the contracts
Amazing.
so that because a lot of, in a hospital, like for the insurance companies, a lot of the contracts get really complicated. It's not just a matter of this service or this procedure has this price. It's, if you're overnight 4 days or 3 days and then you have surgery, then if you have to stay another 2 nights, your rate goes up
It's
by
a double
90.
multiplier or something.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. There's all these complications that nobody gets to analyze and really understand. And so we're looking to try to overcome that so that once we get to a point of transparency, I mean, hopefully it'll all change. If you can make it work with Medicaid on a virtual basis with little capital out of pocket, you get to be the doctor you always wanted to be. And then that transparency, if you're transparent about, hey, it's our new virtual hospital, here's everything that we do, here's our price list, here's how we work virtually with other hospitals, here's where we, use this surgery center's room, here's where we use this 24-hour emergency thing. I'll meet you there if it's this or that, right? And we'll pay them some percentage that we negotiated with them. Great. But just make it all transparent. And now all of a sudden, you'll find yourself making more than you are now because you guys don't get paid shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Particularly surgeons, right? The surgeons get paid primarily, if I understand it right, on a per surgery basis.
Yeah. For a lot of it, it's all RVUs.
Yeah, the
I
RVUs,
mean,
that stuff's insane. Yeah.
well, Medicare's been dropping RVU reimbursement rates for years, and so if you're paying 100% or 120% of Medicare rates, if Medicare's paying us less, then that's a problem too.
I forgot about the RVUs.
Yeah.
You're getting paid based off of an RVU that's going to the hospital who then has to pay you. If all that came to you,
And then you,
yeah,
yeah,
if you need that, you might not even need the hospital.
yeah, yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, it's another complication. Like it's just the expense of,
Sure, sure. And by the way, if you guys do this, I want
yeah.
to know about it because the more
Okay.
I think about it, literally, if you got paid the Medicaid prices and you didn't have all the overhead associated with it, and it all, went to you because you can only do it's like any other specialty in any other hospital. If the hospital doesn't have an oncology group, you're referring it out, right? If you don't have orthopedic surgery, you're referring it out. And so, you know, if you just do the things that you want to do, but has enough volume to pay your bills, putting all that money in your pocket.
Yeah. Well, and then and you're virtual, which is just a better. I mean, that's the other thing that I think physicians are challenged by is, a lot of the stuff we do is in person. But if you can filter out using AI or something, if you filter out and say, yeah, this person's appropriate for, yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah.
plus you'll do telehealth, right? Right? You'll be sitting on the toilet with your phone in your hand. "Hi, Mrs. Doe, tell me about your
I'll tell
hemorrhoids."
you about mine. Yeah. All right, Mark, for every resident, the residents just matched. What is, as a technologist as well, what's the number one thing you think they should be doing to prepare for the future of technology and AI in medicine as well?
Learn everything you can about
Yeah,
AI, period, end of story. So, there's gonna be we all think of ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity, and we try to know the big name models. The reality is there's gonna be millions of models,
completely agree.
millions of
Yeah,
them. And there's gonna be branded hospitals or research centers, universities that have their own model, because there's no way that Mayo is sharing their research and everything they know with MD Anderson or Stanford or, brand
yeah.
you name it, right? Because that diminishes their brand. If you can just go to ChatGPT, no, if it's MD Anderson and it's oncology, whatever their specialty is, you better come to my model, right? Because that's the only place. So understanding all these elements, part one. Part two, understanding how to communicate with patients and families of patients as it relates to AI, because people are going to trust AI more so than they do the doctors because AI is literally going to talk to them as many hours as you want it
As they,
to,
yeah, they can
because you
talk
can literally have
infinitely,
a conversation just like this.
ask infinite questions to the AI about your hemorrhoids or whatever it
Right,
is. Yeah,
right,
yeah,
whatever it is, right? Or I got this
yeah,
feeling, I'm at that age. Okay, my left side. Oh shit, I felt something. Is it going down my arm? No, you get old, this shit happens.
yeah.
And so being able to connect, and again, just thinking off the top of my head, there are these things called agents. And agents are
Yeah,
going,
agentic AI is
yeah,
going crazy. Yeah,
right. And it's just sending like DMing other models, right? Or making yourself available, as the output. And, so, hey, if you're coming to, well, you're a resident, but, if your plan is to have your own practice and understanding this stuff, because doctors like to think they're programmers too. They
yeah,
all love the program, right? They all learn Python and everything, but being able to send and receive agents, okay, Miss Doe, I appreciate you going on ChatGPT or Gemini to understand more of your hemorrhoids, and you're telling me that because it was bright, it was a hemorrhoid as opposed to something else. That's great, but let me just tell you something. Follow these instructions,
yeah.
and every time you look something up, it'll automatically send it to me. And since this is my practice, I'm charging you $1 for
Sure.
every one you send to me. But I'll respond, or my model that I've built learning from all these questions.
We'll give you the best advice and yeah,
Right.
yeah,
And you never know what the best device is, but you can set up scenarios where Miss Doe, the more she sends you, the more you can enable a model to learn more or
yeah,
work with programs that enable your model to learn more. So Miss Doe with the hemorrhoids, she's got to decide on surgery or not surgery or whatever. You've already got a base of information that you can then pull just by talking to it. Miss Doe, how many times have we talked? Da 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 da. And so being able to leverage AI not just as a tool for information for you, but recognizing that it's going to be a tool that will be used by everybody. Nobody's not going to use it.
it's like cell phones or the internet or yeah, electricity. Yeah,
Exactly. Right. And so just, before email, doctors didn't take emails until
yeah,
they did. Before text, doctors didn't take text. Before apps, doctors didn't use apps until they did. Now, that's what's going to happen. So, with agentic AI, being able to accommodate patients in ways that make you smarter and more efficient and make them feel more confident and comfortable, that's what you want because think about your hassle phase right now. That's doing everything for your EMR and Epic.
Yeah. Yeah. And having the agentic AI handle it for you saves you a ton of pain and time,
Yeah, and
you know?
it just
Yeah.
who knows where it goes, but I know it's not gonna go backwards. It's only gonna go forwards, and I can't predict, when all this will be prevalent and common, but I can predict it will be, and I can tell you that the more your model talks to my model, that's going to be like, "Oh, shit." And particularly for young people who are more confident with this stuff, you're 24, you're working, you're hungover, you think you hurt yourself, right? And instead of having the embarrassment of calling your doctor or whatever, or calling your mom, it's just like, "Okay, ChatGPT, da 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 da, send to my doctor." Bam, there it is. The doctor's agent says, "You're fucked up again." Okay, you know,
Come get an
Pedialyte.
X-ray or yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or whatever else it may be.
Yeah. Mark, last question. We've skirted around it a little bit. Doctors unionizing, good or bad?
I mean, fine if you can make it work.
I'm seeing it as a response to the health system employee issue and the grind and getting work to the bone. I'm not sure that it's the best, but it is like a response.
It is a response, and it depends on the employer because 'cause they're all gonna have
Yeah.
different responses to it, but you don't to me, it's a sign you don't have leverage yet. If you get to the point where you have more leverage, then a union can be great. I mean, I can see it both sides. I think Kaiser Permanente is unionized and
Some of the residencies, the residents are, but the attendings are not. MGH at Harvard, there were a bunch of doctors just picketing just a couple days ago. So, there are little pockets around the country where people are.
yeah, look, I'm not against unions at
Yeah,
all. I can make you a ton of arguments, but to answer your question, I think that's a response that says, "I'm stuck."
yeah, yeah. I totally agree, and I don't know another way out. Mark, last thing. If every physician in America could hear you say one thing to us, what would it be?
Thank you. Thank you for all the blood, sweat, and tears you put in to keep us healthy, to keep us alive. All the time you put in learning everything that comes up all day, every day, going through the anxiety of dealing with your family when you have that push and pull of what your family wants and you know what's right as a mom or a dad that you want to do or as a son or daughter and just feeling that pull to take care of a patient. Thank you. I know how hard it is. I can't imagine the stress it creates. Thank you.
Well, Mark, and that is why I wanted to talk to you because you were just so real and appreciative of the work that we all do.
Absolutely.
So thank you for saying that.
My pleasure. I meant every word of it.
Mark Cuban, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for joining me today. If there's someone you think I should interview for How I Doctor, drop us a line at podcast@offcall.com. Make an account on Offcall to confidentially share your details about your work and sign up for our newsletter where you can hear more about the latest trends we're seeing in physician pay. You can find How I Doctor on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll have new episodes weekly. This has been and continues to be Dr. Graham Walker. Stay well, stay inspired, and practice with purpose.